We are Locked On Houston Astros, and we hope that you join us for a daily Locked On Astros podcast. My name is Eric Huysman. You can find me on Twitter at Eric Talks Stros. You can find the show at Locked On Astros, your team every day. And Brett, where can they find you on Twitter?
They can find me at H-Town Wheelhouse on Twitter and at Stros411 on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Always positive, always Stros.
And I have one of my loyal listeners. I remember in the old Talking Stros days, he would always send us kind of some trade suggestions. And so I kind of nicknamed him Larry the GM, and he kind of rolled with it there. But Larry, where can they find you on Twitter?
I'm at Larry the GM.
Yeah, that was super easy there. So, guys, we're going to be talking a little bit about Roberto Osuna today. And he was, like everybody kind of predicted, he was waived. So we'll talk about how that affects the Astros bullpen, how does that affect the Astros. And a very, very big name was put on waivers today. Do the Astros even have a shot? Probably not, but you got to have some type of hope or something. But don't forget, you can get Locked On Astros on podcasting app Himalaya, as well as Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And when you get in your car, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Astros. So because we had Ben Ryder on yesterday, Brett, I was kind of listening to the Edge podcast. I know you said it was really good. I just haven't had a chance, but I've been listening in the car. My daughter's trying to put on something else. I'm like, stop touching it. And so it's really good. And I love the backstories and how he goes back and looking. But one of the things I'm listening to right now was the whole Brandon Taubman episode where and we all know who the reporter is. I don't know why that reporter doesn't want to come out, but we all know who the reporter is. But Roberto Osuna was placed on waivers today, and that means that the Astros are going to rid themselves of the $10 million. That is that how much he's owed, Larry?
They were projecting about $10 million for arbitration settlement for this coming season.
Okay, so I know that he was probably going to miss the whole season. We still don't know what's wrong with him. We don't know if he's going to have Tommy John, whatever. It doesn't matter. So before we start talking about the offseason, let's kind of reflect on it. Was the Roberto Osuna trade worth it? Anybody?
You know what? I want to hear what Larry the GM has to say about this first, because man, you have such great. No, I'm totally. I've got my answer teed up. But for those of y'all listening, if you don't know, you need to. This guy does this analysis of the Astros, and he's a fan I wish I could be. Like me, Eric's always accusing me of being a homer. Larry's very objective. Like, he loves the Astros, but man, he knows his stuff. So Larry, I want to hear what you got to say about this. That Osuna trade, that kind of bit them in the butt when it happened. It kind of lingered a little bit. Good, bad. Is it one of their worst trades that they made, or water under the bridge?
Well, so it's a complicated answer, right? And so I think the the Ben Ryder's podcast probably could do a good job of framing this real issue, right? Because there's the baseball part of that decision that you may come to one conclusion about, but then there's the public relations and or like general cultural framework that I think it's pretty clear that trade wasn't a good trade for the Astros to make. Because I think from a fan support standpoint and putting the Astros as considered the scourge of the earth as far from a league standpoint, I think that trade really did seal the Astros as the evil empire, started the process of many fans considering the Astros to be the evil empire. And it also did reflect, I think, a little bit of the cultural issues that Ben brings out in those podcasts, that the Astros were willing to do anything to win, right? And I think the players, like, man, if we're willing to trade for this guy, given the background, then what's off limits, right? So I think it kind of reflects that culture. Now, that trade actually occurred. Help me, guys. That occurred at the trade deadline of 2018, and that right. And the Astros were. I don't know if folks remember. We were hurting with our closer at that time, right? And so He did come in and help the Astros with the team need that they had. And he, he did do his job, his baseball job. He was a good citizen when he was here. I never heard anybody complain about, what Osuna did as an Astro, either on the field or off the field. But I think there is a framework of the culture and issues that it almost reflected the disease that, Eric, you've talked about on your show a few times related to the culture of the Astros. And so, I don't know, he was a distressed asset, and so the price they paid to get him probably wasn't that great. And so it's a complicated answer. From a baseball standpoint, yes, this probably was a good trade that they because they got what they wanted out of the trade. From a cultural and an overall fan support standpoint, it was not a good trade. Okay, that's probably a great no answer, guys. So that I think
Yes, it is.
I think it's a complicated answer.
Yes, for sure.
No, yeah, I think so too. I think it's less complicated if the Astros didn't have the 2017 scandal looming over their head, because a couple of things that we know, that one of the things that really pissed off our opposing fans or opposing teams was the swag and the moxie and just the cockiness that the Astros walked around after they won 2017, the whole hand behind the ear. And then on top of that, they're like, okay, well, you know what? We'll do you one better. We'll hire this guy that just got a 75-game suspension from Major League Baseball. He got a bigger suspension than Aroldis Chapman.
Right.
And Aroldis Chapman did all kinds of. I mean, he fired a gun at somebody or something crazy, and so I think now I never want a player to get hurt or whatever, but the blessing may be in the curse here, like the devil may be in the details, that he goes out with this injury. It allows the Astros to free up. If he was healthy, I don't know that they do that. You know what I'm saying? So maybe for the Astros, it's a good thing that they're able to cut ties.
I don't know if y'all remember this, but at the time, I actually knew about the trade before it was going to happen. And I was writing for Climbing Towels Hill at the time. And sometimes I would do a speculation piece and on something I kind of had some whispers on. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want this bad juju, because this is going to I just didn't want that. And even when that trade happened, I'm like, I couldn't believe it. And it was outrage all over Twitter, and it should be. And I was following this guy's story because the one time I keep a closer in a fantasy baseball league was Roberto Osuna that season, because he had a great season the year before. And then because I was following this, I'm like, okay, should I hold on to him because he's all this? And then I dropped him because I'm like, you know what? I don't even want this guy on my team, my fantasy baseball team. And so it's a big deal. But I think that, yes, they got rid of Ken Giles, the same Ken Giles that punched himself in the face, the same Ken Giles that could not get his act together in Houston. So I think the Astros are, what I think they're also trying to do is they're trying to clean up their image a little bit. And maybe they're just trying to say, you know what, Jeff Luhnow's gone, the win at all costs, that mentality is gone. So let's go ahead. We don't know what's going to happen with Roberto Osuna next year. So let's just go ahead and save $10 million and just move on. And that way they can never undo what they did. But at least this is a way to say, okay, we're trying to clean things up however possible and whatever. So speaking of the bullpen, I don't want to talk all day about Osuna, but the bullpen, is there anybody out there that you think the Astros should go after? And I know, Brett, you're kind of talking about Brad Hand earlier. That's a weird wave by the Indians, because he had an all-star season last year, and they're just trying to save $10 million. And that's kind of weird. You think the Indians, you're like, oh, they're a good team, but they're trying to save $10 million. That kind of shows the market that we're going to see. But I don't think Brad Hand is going to fall to the Astros. The Astros will probably have the second or third lowest waiver pick. So I don't think he'll make it here. If he does, I hope the Astros do it. But Larry, what do you think the Astros can do to fix their bullpen?
So I agree, Eric. So I think we're going to discover in the next 2 weeks or so how bad the financial situation is really going to be, and what free agency is really going to look like this off season. Because you're going to see lots of teams not offer qualifying offers. You're going to see lots of teams not taking a run at a Brad Hand or any other player that gets cut. You're going to see these like baffling cuts. Like, why would the Indians cut? Well, the Indians were barely hanging on financially, even while they were good for the last couple of years. So they're going to be in a rough situation. So I see the Astros not probably as bad as the Indians, but the Astros really are in a tight financial condition. So I do think they need to try to get a closer if it's possible. I've written and I put together some ideas. I think Alex Colome from the White Sox actually has serves two purposes. Getting him away from the White Sox may be important because the White Sox are going to be really good this coming season, and I don't think he would cost as much as a Brad Hand or okay, the dream might be to get Liam Hendricks away from the A's, but I don't think we can afford him either. So kind of in that 6 to 8 million range is I think what the Astros are going to try to allocate for a closer. Maybe depending on how the market develops, you can get a Colome for that.
Fernando Rodney.
No. See, I mean, there's going to be a certain point if you don't get a quality closer, you just let Presley close again, right? And you let the kids run the bullpen. But I don't think that's really a long-term solution for a championship level team.
Yeah, I really think that it is. I mean, it's literally going to come down to dollars and cents. And while all these fans can speculate, they can make these these wish lists. I want this guy. I had been looking through the various relievers that have been going on waivers, and the Diamondbacks have some interesting guys going on waivers. A guy named Guerra. I can't remember his first name. My internet's out, so I can't search his name right now. But there are a few interesting guys that I don't necessarily know they would be closers. But I have a question, and I don't know that they want to peg him into this role because I think he's probably too talented. But is there a chance that Paredes, if they don't, let's say they don't sign a closer, is there a chance that Paredes and both him and Presley kind of do a little two-man duo at the closing role? Do you remember a few years ago when Octavio Dotel was like, he came in, he was a setup guy, then he became the closer, and we kind of went back and forth a little bit? Is that a possibility this next year?
So there was a point during the 2020 season, and I don't remember exactly what night it was, but it was a night that Paredes had come in and just mowed down the opponents. I think it was sometime in August. And I said, where were you? I tweeted, where were you the night that Paredes became the closer of the Astros, right? I think that's going to be his role. I just don't know that we want to necessarily put that on him in this coming season. But I mean, if they can't get a quality reliever for the right price, I think that's the kind of condition they're going to be into, and it's going to be Paredes and Presley kind of sharing the closing duties, like you referred to.
The eighth inning guy hopefully be Joe Smith. Hopefully he'll be back next year. So, and don't forget Brian Abreu. I know he came into camp overweight, and he was actually off the team for most of the year. But if he comes in shape, he does have the tools to do it. Josh James is going to be missing X amount of time. We'll see what happens with him. But there are some pieces in Astros bullpen, but I think they need one more like veteran guy, somebody kind of be the, I don't want to say it, but the Carlos Beltran veteran leadership role in the bullpen, because even Ryan Presley, he's still this is his fourth or fifth season, something like that. So he's still, I mean, I guess that's considered a veteran, but one thing that kind of that was shocking today was Tony La Russa signing with the to be the manager of the young, the hyper, the bat flipping Chicago White Sox. And that is so weird. And the only reason I bring it up is I just think that he probably drives a old car that maybe needs some old parts sometimes. And so if Tony La Russa needs to get to whatever that ballpark is called, where could he go to get his parts?
Is it like Guaranteed Rate Field or something? I don't even know. New Kaminsky Park. He can go to rockauto.com. Rockauto.com is a family business. It's been around for 20 years, and they have this easily navigable website. Forget going to the chain stores. Forget going there and sitting there waiting for the guy behind the counter to look into the computer for 20 minutes and only be able to sell you the part that he has in his warehouse, which is going to take 3 weeks to get there. And it's going to cost you 30, 50, sometimes 100% more. Or, you could do this. You go to rockauto.com and you could get treated just like you're a professional mechanic. You get the same discount, the same prices. When you go there, you're looking for whatever it is. You need a new grill, you need a glass pack, you need a lift kit, whatever you need, go to rockauto.com. They are reliably low prices. It's a great, well-navigable website. When you go to rockauto.com and get your part, I want you to type locked on in the where did you hear about us box so that so they know we sent you. Rockauto.com, reliably low prices, always the most easy searchable website. Go to rockauto.com today.
All right, so now we're talking about La Russa signing to be the manager of the White Sox. They released something, and it had AJ Hinch's signature on it. That was so classic. I mean, they're talking about AJ Hinch going, and there's a chance that a contender who has AJ Hinch on their team, maybe George Springer goes with him. Who knows? But this is so weird, especially with the young talent the White Sox have to have that. But the rumors are now that AJ Hinch is the leading candidate for the Tigers job. And that's not surprising. He's not going to manage the Yankees right now. He's going to have to kind of work his way back up. But any surprise about either? I mean, I know Hinch is not really signed on yet, but the rumors say he is going to be that. But any thoughts about La Russa managing the White Sox?
I'm shocked, to be honest with you. He hasn't managed for 6 years. He's 74 now. The last news he made with the Chicago White Sox was a former player talking about how he used a scheme to steal signs, I believe, using TV cameras. I'm not sure about it 100%. But La Russa, outside of that, I mean, he's got a great track record. So he's got the name, he's got the experience.
9 years out, though. He's been.
Oh, is it 9? I thought it was 6. Okay, 9 years. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the White Sox were thinking there.
That was the
Good
owner.
for AJ.
The owner fired him apparently and regretted it. So now this is him saying, you know what? I want him back. I want him to come in and mold our young players or whatever. So, okay.
Well, see, my thing is with AJ Hinch, I think it's great. I think if he goes to the Tigers, that is a young club. That is a club that's compiling tons of talent. And what worries me about Hinch going to Detroit is not Springer, is when Verlander comes off of this injury and recovers at 39, he may go back to Detroit. I think he signs with one of two teams. He signs with Houston or Detroit. And if AJ Hinch is there, I think it makes a desirable place for him to pitch until he's 43 or 45 or until his arm falls off. So that's what I think. What do you think, Larry?
I don't even know what kind of manager La Russa is going to be at this age, right? And I don't know how that. I don't know. Of course, I didn't see a lot of the White Sox, but I have a perception that it's a fairly loose and carefree team with all the young players. I just don't think it's going to work. I think he's going to try to demand, like, let me try to show you what being a baseball player is all about. And they're going to try to show him, like, well, no, let us show you what being a baseball player in the 21st century is all about, Tony. And, I think there's going to be a clash of cultures, but it'll be interesting. I would have thought they would have been a lot better off with AJ Hinch in the Chicago White Sox. You want to go to the guy that has recent experience with leading a winning team, but I think we're going to see a lot of interesting moves in this offseason. I don't know that one's going to work.
So here's the thing. Do you know who he managed, Tony La Russa?
Pujols,
He managed
right?
No, he managed Dusty Baker.
Oh, okay.
That's crazy.
Yeah. All right. So while we're talking about the moves this offseason, I know that in your, I don't know if we can call it article. I don't know if you published it anywhere. It's really good, but you're talking about George Springer, and you're talking kind of about the amount of money that's already basically set in stone. So do you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about how much is on our salary already? And do you think that they can bring back Springer? And if they don't bring back Springer, is there a chance that they go ahead and re-sign Correa or extend Correa?
Okay, so yeah, there's a bunch of questions there. Let's kind of start with the financial situation. So the Astros really had a payroll that would have had a full season payroll that would have been about 220 to 225 million this year, which would have been the fourth high. Well, it was the fourth highest payroll among teams. Okay, I don't think Jim Crane is going to go over the CBT, the competitive balance threshold, which is going to be 210 million in coming year. I think he's actually going to scale that down because I think the Astros were probably one of the teams that lost a fairly significant amount of money of all the franchises because they had that huge payroll. Their revenue from TV sources is not quite as high as some of the other bigger teams with the bigger payrolls. So I said, okay, let's assume, and I know I don't want your audience to get too lost in all the numbers, Eric. So we're gonna try to keep it pretty easy. Let's just say 190 is the target for the payroll. If you look at the Astros players that they already have signed or committed to this next season, which includes Verlander, and maybe you guys can help me, but I think there may be a way to use a settlement, medical settlement or something.
Yeah, there's insurance. Ben Ryder was talking about that yesterday. So they
I
should get most of it. Good.
Yeah. Does that come off the CBT though? That's what I don't. I think they're committed to 33. They just don't have to pay to. They won't have to pay to 33. Okay.
Right.
So all right. So let's say he still targets 190. There's 133 to 134 million just in the players that they owe salaries to from the contracts they have. In addition to that, they'll have about $15 million in what they call an estimated player benefits. That's the bonuses and such that they're embedded in the contracts, and about $2.5 million for salaries of 40-man roster players that are in the minor leagues. Okay, so call that all that together, you get to about $151 million. So roughly $40 million to make every additional offseason move that the Astros are going to need to make. So we added in the amount of payroll that they're going to have for their arbitration players. Added in the payroll that they'll have for their pre-arbitration players. We haven't even made a decision about the arbitration players, and we're at $151 million. So then you look at the arbitration. I don't think you're going to get arbitration for Davinsky, and we saw today they cut Osuna. So that leaves Correa, Diaz, Garneau, and McCullers. And I think they're going to offer those for arbitration. And if you add those together, that's about $19 million in arbitration number. So we're roughly at 170. And I'm saying I think the target for the Astros may be 190. I don't. Obviously, I'm not in the front office. I don't know. But if you kind of look at where it might be reasonable for them, so you're basically at about a $20 million gap then of what they can really afford to spend in free agency, and that's not going to be enough to pay. That's not going to be enough to pay Springer. I mean, it's just not. And so there is a way that they could extend and you'd have to go back to the details of what they did with Bregman in March, and you can look at the way they set that deal before the season, before he was even arbitration eligible, and they basically set up Bregman for a long-term contract. It didn't affect the year that they made the deal, the CBT number for that for Bregman that year, it pushed it forward to the next 5 years. It was a cap number of $20 million. But what Bregman did get is the bonus money. So essentially, Bregman got a $10 million bonus. I could see doing something along that kind of framework with Correa, and then Correa ends up with a roughly 30 million CBT average, AAV average, and he gets a bonus paid, and he gets roughly $9 to $10 million that he would get in arbitration, and then you get the kind of framework of a deal of a $210 million 7-year contract for Correa. That's what I would love to do with Correa. I don't, I don't know where the finances are going to be. So
yeah, I think no, it's okay. I think with if Springer's on his way out, you definitely finagle that contract, backload it, put the stuff on the back end of the contract, because to me, especially after this year, Correa seems to be a better long-term asset, a longer-term asset, and a higher value asset overall. We know, I mean, not to take anything away from Springer's bat, Springer's leadoff, what he does in October, just who he is, that's not replaceable. But if you've got to have one or the other, and you've got to choose, I've got to go with Correa, because I think his long-term benefit helps this club out to stay competitive longer than Springer does.
Yeah, Correa's 26, right? I mean, we got a lot of great years. Correa's got a lot of great years of baseball, as long as he stays healthy, and that's the risk of a long-term Correa deal. But that's, I think what I'm proposing is the framework. Now Jim Crane may say, hey, there's no way we can pay all that money in out years, given the financial situation. I'm trying to propose things that I think make sense. So Eric, let's talk about outfield and what do you do if you don't have Springer. Number one, there's a name that people need to learn in Astros fandom, and that's Pedro Leon. All right, who the heck is Pedro Leon, and why is Larry the GM telling us we got to learn his name? Pedro Leon is a 22-year-old Cuban baseball player that defected in 2018, and is considered to be one of the top 10 international players. But he's developed to a point where they think he could come in as soon as this coming season, by the back end of the season. Pedro Leon could be on our
playoff roster. He could be our Rosarina.
Randy Rosarina, right? He could be our stud outfielder that comes in from nowhere. So he'll be the next Cuban star on our team. That's a huge projection I just gave him. So that, I believe Pedro Leon will not be there day one with the team, but he'll be developing and targeting to be with the Astros the second half of the year. And the goal will be to have him at a point. Now, again, we're talking about risk and risk management. So what do you do with the Astros? Number one, I put Diaz in left field, okay, and utilize him. And basically, Diaz is my everyday left fielder, and Tucker's my everyday right fielder. And then the question is, who's the center fielder? I believe that they could go out and get a Jackie Bradley Jr. roughly about I'm hoping that maybe you can get him in a 2-year deal, $11 million a year. And I think that gives everybody the kind of the framework to making it work. So that's one of the targets I would have. Then you can look at a Kevin Pillar and Enrique Kiki Hernandez, and even a Jake Marisnik if you want to go a little bit on the lower side of that.
Or Jock Peterson. Nope.
Yeah, or Jock Peterson, right? Yeah. So that's the framework that's the universe of the kinds of players I think we're talking about coming in and playing center field for the Astros, essentially to the day that we get Pedro Leon and then when you get Pedro Leon, and if Pedro Leon is everything I'm building him up to be, then he's in center field because he's actually a natural center fielder. Then you could move Jackie Bradley Jr. to left field, or put him in right field and put Tucker in left field. And then you can put Diaz back in that utility kind of role, and you've got some more depth. That's what I think the Astros are going to do. I know everybody wants to have Springer. I'm just here to tell you what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, they're going to have to find a way to allocate their money. And something I just kind of thought about was uh, Josh Reddick. Could they bring him back on a 1-year deal? Just for this kind of the bridge until the Pedro Leon, maybe like a $5 million deal or something.
But who
Just
plays center field opening day?
Miles
it's
Straw.
gonna be Miles Straw. Yeah.
I mean, if Springer's gone,
Unless Alvarez, his knees are like super good.
I put Jackie Bradley Jr. in center field.
Yeah. Yeah, I would go after Jackie Bradley Jr. over Reddick. I'm just saying, as a fallback option, that's something that you could do.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think Reddick probably signs with someone for more than $5 million. You know, I don't see the Astros bringing him back.
Yeah, it was just a thought. So to kind of we're running a little bit out of time. Let's go and talk a little bit about the I guess the starting rotation and life without Justin Verlander. Kind of do you see anything that you don't think that they need to go out there and get another starter, do you, Larry?
I don't think they're going to be able to.
Right.
I mean, I spent my money that I said I had. Right. I'm against my $190 million cap.
So it's a reliever basically at this point. A reliever, maybe an outfielder, and they're done. That's probably all they're going to have the money to do.
I think so, and I know that that's not popular, but I'm just trying to help people understand. I mean, I'm the one that said it last year they're not signing Cole. There's just no way they're signing Cole, and people hated me for saying it. And I'm just doing the math. It's not going to happen, right? And so, I think what's interesting is that the Astros played so many young pitchers this last year. It's going to be kind of interesting. Like how do we feel about a Valdez, McCullers, Edie, Greinke, and Javier starting pitching staff?
Well, I tell you this, I love it. I think, and y'all can boo me if you want to, but I think Framber Valdez has the ability to be a top 10 pitcher next year in the major leagues. I mean, he has got the stuff, and I think that if this club is winning ball games, he's going to be one of the guys. He's going to win. He's going to get to 10 wins first. I think he's going to. I mean, he was unbelievable this season with all the pitching woes they had, and whoever his psychologist is, he needs to give that person a bonus, because I've shared this before. When we saw him pitch in Round Rock AAA last year, my son and I interviewed a few players down there, and he was on the mound. It was Correa's last game in rehab there, and Valdez had just been called down, and he didn't look good. And my son, who was 11 at the time, even said, "Dad, he looks nervous. Like, he doesn't look comfortable out there." And something's changed. I mean, he's a different guy. And so I love the fact that Valdez is coming into his own, and I expect big things out of him next year.
So the Astros did some things in international free agency in 2015 and 2016, and a lot of those guys are the guys that were the core of all these young rookie pitchers that showed up this year. And I think we're going to see that continue to develop. And we're talking about the Perez's, Valdez was in that group, Urquidy was in that group, Javier's in that group. They did a lot of work in getting those guys up and on the team. And so, and there's more in the minors. I don't know that they're as good as the ones we got. Of course, we got Whitley too. And, the question is, what is and when is Whitley going to come here? Right?
Well, he's got to be added to the 40-man roster.
Yeah, he's got to be on the 40-man roster. So he's going to get a chance.
He's going to get a chance. And I think they're going to start him in the bullpen probably this year. He needs to get some major league experience at this point. I know he hasn't proven anything in AAA, but I think he needs to just get up to the show and see what they do. So he could be that 8th inning guy for the 2020 season. He throws hard enough. So we'll have to see how his arm bounces back. And I guess the big question that we can talk about tomorrow, Brett, is the qualifying offers have to be placed, I believe, this Sunday if I remember correctly. So, or pretty soon, will they sign Michael Brantley or offer him a contract? And with what Larry has to say, I don't think they have the money, because if they offer the 18.9 to Michael Brantley, is like, ooh, that's more than I'll get anywhere else. Let me go and take that. He may take that.
And the thing about Brantley, Eric, is that where will you play him, right? Because he played more than half his games at DH this year. Yep. So, and we got a DH, right? And so I'm just not sure there's a place for him.
Right. So, any final thoughts? We got about a minute left.
From my view, Eric, is I think the Astros fans need to be aware of the financial situation. They need to start learning some of the names I just put out there, and really track with the team as they make the decisions they make. You know, one of the things I'd love to talk to you guys more in depth about at some point is the Rule 5 draft and how we're going to protect people for that.
Yeah, we'll have to do that pretty soon, because I think that deadline's coming up. But I'm going to make a little bold statement. I'm going to say that Christian Javier has more wins than Framber Valdez next year.
Wow, look at you.
Because I just think if
they got 18 and 19.
Huh?
They have 18 and 19.
Yes, something like that. They're to do
no,
I'm not saying Framber Valdez is going to be bad. I just think Christian Javier is going to be that good. I think that once he gets his control. Anyway, you've been listening to Locked On Astros podcast. Thank you, Larry GM, for joining the show. Brett, we'll see you tomorrow, and go Astros, and happy trails, Roberto Osuna.